If hard work builds wealth, why do so many smart, disciplined people still feel stuck after years of effort? They earn more, work longer, and carry more stress, but their money still depends on the next paycheck. That is the trap. We are going to break down the difference between labor and capital, why billionaires stop selling time, and what you need to change if you want work to build freedom instead of just funding bills. The safe path often looks steady, but steady income can still sit on a weak foundation. To understand the trap, start with one simple point. Labor means you trade time, skill, and energy for money. You show up, you produce, and you get paid. That sounds fair, and for a while it works well, especially if you are capable and willing to work hard, but the structure carries a limit that most people do not face early enough. The limit is not always your salary. In many cases, your income can rise for years. The problem sits deeper. Your money still depends on your continued output, which means your life runs on a constant exchange. You give hours, focus, and effort, and the cash arrives. Slow that down and the cash usually slows with it. Think about what that does over time. A raise feels like progress, and sometimes it is, but the extra money rarely creates freedom on its own because taxes take a slice, inflation erodes buying power, and lifestyle creep quietly absorbs what is left. The apartment gets nicer, the car payment grows, the trips cost more, and the standard of living rises faster than real ownership. So you work harder to protect a life that now costs more to maintain. That is the treadmill. More effort keeps the machine going, but it does not move you far from the machine itself. You are earning, but you are still tied to the same basic trade: time for money. There is another weakness built into this model, and most workers feel it but do not name it clearly. One job often means one main paycheck, and one paycheck means concentrated risk. If the company changes direction, if the role disappears, if your health takes a hit, the full plan shakes at once. People call this security because the deposit arrives every 2 weeks, but regular cash flow is not the same as resilience. What wealthy people understand earlier is that discipline alone does not solve a structural problem. Many workers try to beat the system with effort, better habits, longer hours, and sharper skills. And all of that helps, but effort cannot remove the ceiling if the model itself keeps income attached to your calendar. You are trying to solve a math problem with willpower. Owners think about the same problem in a different way. Instead of asking, "How can I earn more from my next hour?" they ask, "How can this hour build something I keep owning later?" That shift changes everything because ownership can continue to produce after the work is done. Labor stops when you stop. Assets do not work that way. This is why billionaire examples matter, not because you should copy their scale, but because you should notice their pattern. Most of them worked hard early. They built companies, took risks, made decisions, and stayed close to the operation. But the long-term win did not come from selling more hours. It came from building systems, equity, and assets that kept paying long after their direct effort stopped driving every result. A salary can fund wealth. It can absolutely start the process. But salary by itself rarely creates freedom, because freedom begins when income no longer needs your constant presence. Once you see that labor has a ceiling, the next question gets more interesting. What do rich people build instead? Capital is simpler than most people think. It is not some fancy term for rich people. Capital is anything you own that can pay you, grow in value, or do both without needing your direct labor every single hour. A share of a business, a rental property, a broad fund, even part of a private company, the form can change, but the principle stays the same. You own the thing, and the thing can produce. That is the break. Labor pays you once. Capital can pay you again and again. What this means is your job should not be the final plan. Your job is the fuel. It gives you cash flow, and that cash flow gives you options, but only if you keep enough margin to buy ownership. Most people never make that turn. As income rises, they upgrade the lifestyle first and delay the asset purchase until later, and later often never comes. The paycheck grows, but the ownership stays small. Rich people think in the other direction. They use labor to buy capital, then they use capital to reduce how dependent they are on labor. This is why the early phase matters so much. If you spend every raise, you stay in the same loop with nicer furniture. If you direct that raise into assets, you start changing the structure of your life. Now, ownership can take a few forms. A business gives you equity and control. Shares give you exposure to earnings without running the company yourself. Real estate can give you cash flow and long-term appreciation. Broad asset classes spread risk across many holdings, which matters because diversification lowers the damage from any single mistake. The point is not to worship one asset class. The point is to own productive things. Think about labor like carrying water by hand. You can get stronger, move faster, and carry more buckets, but you still need to wake up and make the trip. Capital is building a pipe. The pipe takes work up front, and at first it feels slow, but once it runs, water keeps moving without your hands on every bucket. That is the shift wealthy people make. This is also the pattern you see in billionaire wealth. They stop chasing more paid hours and start increasing equity, control, and scale. Their wealth does not come from billing more time. It comes from owning a larger share of systems that keep producing. Even when they stay active, the money no longer depends on one more hour of personal output. That is a very different life. So the framework is simple. First, earn. Second, protect your margins so your income does not disappear into consumption. Third, buy assets on a steady schedule. Fourth, repeat long enough for compounding to start carrying more of the load. At first, this feels boring because small ownership looks weak next to a monthly salary. But small ownership grows. Wages reset every pay cycle. And this is the decision point. You can keep treating work as the product you sell forever, or you can treat work as the engine that buys the product, ownership itself. Hard work helps only when it buys assets that keep producing after your shift ends. If you want more clear thinking on ownership, wealth, and long-term strategy, subscribe, watch the next video, and tell me in the comments, are you still selling time? Or are you starting to buy assets instead today?